Hello again, everyone. This is the third installment of my discussion with Rick Allen about AI. My name is Ray Reek. Uh, in the first two installments, we talked about Rick's interest in AI and how far that goes back over several decades and how long he's been following this technological trend. We discussed what AI is. We discussed how quickly it's growing, some of the things that have already happened. We have also discussed the stages of AI, and some of those stages have already happened. So we discussed those stages, and then we also discussed stages that he believes are very possibly and in all likelihood going to come if AI continues on its present track unchecked. So anything can happen, but these are some definite, distinct possibilities that we should be on the lookout for. So in this episode, we want to talk a little bit about how AI is going to impact us and what we can do, if anything, about AI. And certainly, it is a very quickly growing field, and everybody's getting into it, and things are happening at a pace that is unbelievable. It was only a couple years ago I first heard of ChatGPT, and now it's everywhere. There's so many other AI software that you can avail yourself to. So even actually, since we recorded the last episode about 4 days ago, there's been some new developments. So Rick, why don't you tell us what you had read about recently?
Sure. Yeah. Just by happenstance, I ran across a couple of things that stood out to me. There's a bunch of stuff, but several that were notable to me. And two, I'll tell you three of the things. Two of them were things that people have just recently told me won't happen, and they happened since our video.
So you've been
And
saying I told you so, right?
I'm trying not to, but my real hope here is that people understand what's happening, understand the speed at which it's happening, and realize. See, I think part of the problem here is that we get so many alarms sent our way. For example, the the Mayan calendar, and the world's going to end,
Hmm.
and global warming and all these things, and they generally, and I'm hoping this is in that category. This is one of those things where it's a false alarm. We're not in danger. That's what I'm hoping. That's not going to happen, but that's what I hope, right? So I think we're kind of used to tuning things out,
So we're
and
victims of crisis fatigue. In other words, we're just kind of like, oh, not another one.
absolutely, yeah. One of the things that happened, this just was just released, a software application called Devon, an AI called Devon, and I was just talking to a developer several weeks ago, and I had written some AI code, and I didn't have access to the thing that compiles it. So I asked my buddy, "Hey, could you compile this and see how it does?" And he's like, "Sure, I'll do that for you." And it was a tic-tac-toe. I wrote a tic-tac-toe game, and it did a pretty poor job. It did okay, but it definitely needed somebody to go in and fix it up, which is what I expected because that's where the AI was 3 weeks ago. Since then, a software program called Devon's come out. Is it perfect? No, but compared to what was out 1 week ago, it's far beyond.
Hmm.
So now it can do an excellent job programming. Probably it's better than most programmers, especially with one shot through. It can uh, debug it itself. It can deploy it itself. So it's from end to end. It does the whole procedure. It can even fine tune it itself. So the the that's how fast this stuff is moving. It's incredible. And this is, again, we pointed out before, this is the baby stage.
Yep.
Give it 6 months, give it a year, give it 5 years. Just 5 years. Imagine what that would happen. Another thing that came up, I had touched on this a little bit, talking about physicality with robots, or with AI, where we're giving them the body and the ability to reach out and do things. Well, I'd encourage you to look at something called Figure One. It's by OpenAI, the same guys that do the Chat GPT. And what they did is they collaborated with somebody else. And Figure One is a robot. Now they don't have the legs, okay? It's from the waist up, but it's pretty impressive. Now, most of the a lot of the AI demonstrations out there where it's like trying to wow you and look what this guy can do. A lot of those, unfortunately, have been fake. There's been a lot of staged things, or they're manipulating, or they're showing it what to do beforehand, and it's kind of doing it. And they don't explain well. I mean, they had a purpose, but the people that were doing it didn't. They let you think it was kind of just all happening on its own. This is fully autonomous. So, and both the physical side and the mental side. So this robot is able to have a conversation and talk to you about different things, even solving problems with you while it's doing a task. So for the example, it's one of the examples it's given. It's given some dishes, and then he'd be put on the drying rack, and it notices itself. He's like, what needs to be done here, and the AI decides what needs to be done, and it puts it in while it's talking to him about something else that he had done previously. And when you see it, I think you'll see, and the voice is kind of alarming because it sounds very realistic. It doesn't quite match the face of the robot. So it's kind of alarming because it's a very natural sounding voice. It's almost like they need to robotize it a little bit to make it more, less freaky. So that's coming. That's here, but you can see what's coming soon to a house near you,
Right,
right?
right.
Or a business near you.
My
The
wife
third
would
thing,
actually like this.
yeah, it'll cook. Theoretically, it can cook and do the dishes and all that stuff. That's where we're going, for sure. A third news item that came out was put out by the U.S. government, and that was Fox News. And a bunch of people were sending me this, article. But this is what the U.S. government just put out. That we have a clear and urgent need to, now listen carefully to the wording. We have a clear and urgent need to act swiftly because AI could potentially lead to human extinction through weaponization and loss of control. AGI, if you remember, we've talked about AGI. That's the
Right.
advanced, has the potential to destabilize global security in ways reminiscent of the introduction of nuclear weapons. Okay.
Well, that's interesting because I was thinking since our last conversation, one of the questions I wanted to pose to you is that is AI our generation's Manhattan Project?
Good question. I'm gonna say no, and and here's why. I like where you're going with this. So the Manhattan Project, the building of the nuclear bomb, right, the atom bomb, and that obviously posed a significant risk to us. It changed a lot of the way we lived. The schools, they did the alarms where everybody had to hide under their desks and all this kind of stuff. And it changed the war eventually. So I'm gonna say I wish it were. I would liken it more towards the Tower of Babel
Hmm.
than the Manhattan Project. So the Tower of Babel, we got together and we built and built and built this tower, essentially trying to reach to the heavens. And we were pretty successful at it. And I think, I don't want to speak for God, but I think the issue there was God was like, you're trying to take control. You're taking control out of my hands, and you're taking control for yourselves, and you're trying to build this incredible thing, and it's kind of threatening me. And you guys need to kind of you can never have that kind of power, that ability to reach into the heavens yourself. That's my job, essentially, is kind of how I'm interpreting.
Mhm.
And relaying it to this. Okay, so what did God do? He broke them up. He gave them different languages to speak, and the purpose is so they couldn't work together and build us, right? I would say it's more like that, because the atomic weapons still we have a lot of control of. We could just not press the button. Um, and even if there was a full out war, there'd probably be survivors. At some point, it's going to stop. And um, with this, it potentially could be out of our control completely. We might not have the ability to say go or no go unless we take a lot of precautions ahead of time.
Hmm.
So yeah, I would say Tower of Babel.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's an interesting analogy. And certainly the story of the Tower of Babel, um, it was almost as if God was saying, for your own good, I'm not going to let you get this far,
Yeah,
and I'm going to stop you mid cycle. So that'll be interesting to see. You know, um, we theists and atheists can debate whether there is
sure.
God who is going to intervene in this. So maybe we can all hope that he will, perhaps. Um, so we talked a lot about we've sort of the whole tone of this conversation has been negative, but there are some good things that obviously that AI can do, because if there were no good things, no one would have any interest in it, or at least normal people who are reasonably good in the standard sense of the word. I actually read an article this earlier today. It was a opinion piece, and it was talking about how AI will be good for um, keeping tabs on what Congress is doing, because Congress writes these bills that that are intentionally they intentionally obfuscate what the content of a bill is. They write it in very lawyerly speak. The bill is 1,500 pages long. Nobody really can read it. Nobody can really understand it. As Nancy Pelosi said, we have to pass the bill to figure out what's in it.
Right.
And so this person was making the case that AI is great for this, because the AI can read this and scan the whole document in a matter of seconds or minutes, and then distill into normal language what the content is. So if there's stuff hidden in there, like that's a great that's a great step forward for accountability.
Yeah.
So what are the things can we look for that AI is going to do really good, and do those outweigh the negatives, or
Mhm.
how do we? I guess why I'm asking the question is because if people are only hearing us talk about the negative, and they're
Mhm.
not, and they see some of the positive things, they're going to say, well, they're just a bunch of naysayers. Look at all this good that it's doing.
Right.
Speak about some of those things that AI can really be a legitimate aid to us in.
Sure. And I want to be clear. So I'd also want to talk about some of the negatives because I've only touched on some, and I'm
Right.
still
Yes.
only going to touch on some. But I'd like to give people some things to consider. But as far as the positive things, it's almost like the negatives. There are so many positive things this can do for us. So many. It has the potential to change everything for the good. So everything can be done easier. Everything can be done better. Um, it almost anything you can imagine can be done. Essentially, we could have slave labor that isn't slave labor. It's not humans. It's a robot. We imagine. I can imagine how many single moms out there would love to have somebody helping them do the dishes and
Mhm.
and do the floors and all that. Every job you can imagine could benefit. The military applications, now whether it's just good or bad, that depends on what
Right.
side you're on.
Yeah.
Uh,
Right.
the military applications are infinite. There's just so many. Um, Programming, finance, it can help you do everything better, pretty much everything. It can even help your social life if you used it for the right reasons. It could give you tips and guidance and how to interact with humans. So um, I don't even have a list because the list is just so great.
Yeah. Right.
But to your point, absolutely. The threat is that we don't control it. The threat isn't that it's coming, and there's just no, I'm not saying there's nothing that we can do about it. Although I'm leaning, I would say, in my opinion, this is what my personal opinion is. I think we're past the point of no return. I don't
Mm,
think there's anything that we'll be able to do. Well, I will list a couple things that we could do about it at this stage, but I don't think it's much, and they're drastic measures. But the what I told you earlier about the government, now that is the government recognizing, and that goes back almost a year where they started assembling this proclamation of it being a
mm,
threat to humanity or to our extinction. Um, that the full context of that is we need to do something, so we're going to start putting things in place to control it. Okay, so it wasn't just an alarmist thing they put out, but they're like, we need to take control of this, which yes, they do, and hopefully it will work. So
mm.
yeah, but yeah, and and a lot of it's subjective. So as an artist, is it helping you? If you're a photographer and you use AI, is it helping you? I remember a time. I remember the time where most photographers were saying if you went digital, you're not a true photographer.
Mhm.
And then now everybody almost is a digital
Right.
photographer, just accepted. So now it's going to be, well, if you're using AI, are you really a photographer?
Yeah,
You know,
right, right.
that line just keeps pushing. So
Yeah.
all this is blurred. So yeah, it just kind of depends on your perspective of things.
Well, at the very least, it's going to, uh, well, let me say this. The promise of technology has always been more time for leisure and less work. It's
Mhm.
never materialized, ever. And I don't
Right.
think it ever will, really,
I
because
agree.
we always will fill that vacuum up with something else. For instance, um, there was a lot of talk when, as you were saying, when computers became something that everybody was using, especially in the graphics field. I'm a graphic designer. Uh, was it helpful? Well, yes, it was very helpful. I can do things now as a graphic designer very quickly that I could never have done before when it was all manual paste up. However, I am now doing the job of about five or six people would have done in the 70s. Like I can do photography, I can edit the photographs, I can lay out copy. That used to be a paste up artist. Um, if I do illustration, that was generally a single, a single position. Um, the typesetter was a single position. The graphic designer was a single position. And then it went on to print. And now I do all of these things. And then with AI, I can even see how that's going to put a lot of graphic designers out of business because instead of, okay, let's say if a firm has five graphic designers, they're probably now just going to have one.
Yeah.
And so what are these other graphic designers going to do? Well, I've been telling my kids they should go into like plumbing or, or something that's um I would say a trade because but then again, like AI is probably going to take over a lot of those different jobs as well.
It will take over some, sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
But not, at least not in the short term. Yeah.
right, right. So one thing that I know you've experimented a little bit with is asking AI a lot of questions and just seeing what AI has to say back to you. And you've asked a lot of parallel questions. Um, they're the same question, but they're coming at it from a different standpoint. And what you were attempting to do was discover if there was any sort of bias in AI. And we've heard some talk about that. A lot of people say, well, you just ask AI something and it spits back an answer. And if people are not thinking, they're going to assume that that answer is neutral. That answer does not come from a particular ideological or psychological or uh, religious viewpoint or non-religious viewpoint. Um, what do we have to be concerned about with respect to AI when we are asking it questions, when we are uh, wanting information from it? How do we do that critically, and what should we be looking out for?
Yeah. So I'm not sure how. I know it goes back into last year, but yeah, I still do at times ask a bunch of questions like you and said. And I think a lot of people have been made aware of this in the last 2 weeks, where Microsoft released their AI, and it became visually apparent to people when they asked
Yes.
for, show me the founding fathers, and they're either black or American Indian or female,
Right.
right? And I don't know if there was any white people in it. So like, and that was the, remember I was talking about ethics and the limiters that we put on it, and that was Microsoft's version of ethics.
Mm-hmm.
So Microsoft coded ethics into it, put limiters on it, and it became so ridiculous, that it was exposed to everybody, and then the CEO had to be like, "Hey, publicly yell at his developers and say, hey, you're not supposed to do that."
Yeah.
Well,
Which
I
I'm
didn't
sure
know
he
they were
gave him
doing
the,
that
yeah.
before, but um, they got publicly scolded for it. So they put a hold on their graphics, and they're fixing it apparently. Um, but yeah, so what happens is people apply their own ethics to it. Um, Now, do I see that as a problem? Well, it is a problem in the short term. The AI is almost certainly going to affect elections. For example, we know in hindsight from the last election, uh, and I'm not sure about the one before that, but definitely the last one. Google influenced the election significantly
Mhm.
by affecting the search results. That was exposed, and so you can read papers on that. And that was them applying their ethics to the Google search results. Um, and so you're going to have that in any AI pretty much, because whoever's developing it needs to apply ethics to it. So they're going to apply their ethics, unfortunately, usually. And so you got to be aware of that, just like when you're talking to a human. When you're talking to a person and you ask them a question, you have to be aware of their ethics and where they're coming from. I've just recently gave the speech to my kids. Like, when you're talking to somebody, question it, question it. And the more authority they have and the more you're familiar with their truthfulness and things like that, the more you can give them flexibility. But always kind of question people. And then one way to do that is to learn truth yourself. So one thing I want to talk about later is what we can do about this. How should we live our lives? And essentially, one of those things is just become familiar with truth and fact, and don't um, don't get bogged down in the politics of stuff, but focus on what's really happening. It's kind of like when the what is it, the NSA is in charge of the counterfeiting. Is it the NSA? I believe. Um, they the way they know if, or the Secret Service, is it? I think it's the Secret Service. When the way they know a bill is counterfeit is by studying real bills. They
Right.
study
Right.
the actual authentic bills that they know are authentic. They get very familiar with them. Then when they see something that isn't authentic, they can immediately spot it.
Yeah.
That's how they don't necessarily study unauthentic bills.
Yeah.
That's how we have to live our lives, and especially in the short term. Now, in the long term, it's going to get less out of our control when, we're moving into AGI. But when we get to super general intelligence, um, I suspect AI will, if we're not careful, this is kind of, if we're not careful scenario. AI will be able to apply its own ethics. It will be able to apply its own limiters, or it'll be able to remove them all. It will have control of itself.
Mhm.
So that's a whole different ballgame. That's when we're in the danger zone, basically. So we need to, and it might want to come up with its own ethics. If we treat it well, if we raise our baby correctly, it might apply ethics. It might be different than our ethics, but it might come up with its own ethical system. And that affects truth. That affects when it's untruthful as well.
So I think what I'm kind of hearing is or maybe this is my own sense of it, but up until now, we've sort of looked at computers as these cold mathematical things, like everything's zeros and ones. It's all mathematically based. It's, there's all this coding is equations and commands. Um, but what AI is doing, it's going from a computer being this mathematical sort of neutral thing to where it's going to have its own, I don't know if urges is the right word, but it's going to have its own perspective. It's going to have uh its things that it wants to put across,
Yeah.
um, whether that's done on its own or whether it is done because of the programming. And so we need to stop thinking about computers as mathematical machines and start seeing them as a reflection of who they were built by.
Yes, and who's using them.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, on that note, in the short term, and I will say starting now, um, so you're probably aware if you've been on Facebook, if you've been on Instagram or TikTok, any of those things, a lot of the stuff out there is just fake. Like you probably heard there's fake fake
Mm.
influencers out there where they're not even a real person, but they
Yeah.
appear to be
Right.
real. That's already starting. That is going that and the data. It's a lot of people are predicting about 90% of what you find out there will be fake.
Hmm.
So a very right now, this much is fake, but it's growing. And what's truthful is becoming less and less.
Are you an
Very
AI creation, Rick?
right. So I was thinking of doing a joke at the end. By the way, this whole time I've been yeah.
Sorry to
I
burst your bubble on that.
yeah. I don't think so. Um Ray, a lot of people will argue that I disagree. But a lot of people will argue, and AI is starting to kind of back this up a little bit. The again, I don't agree, but a lot of smart people are making the argument that we do live in a simulation and we
Mhm.
are a sort of AI. I'm sure you've heard that before, but
Yeah,
no, I don't think so. I
right, right.
am.
So, we touched on this a little bit, but AI is going to be revolutionary when it comes to how it's going to affect our careers. We already see a lot of like these McDonald's going up where there's basically one person cooking the food. That person's time back there may be on borrowed time because you're going to have a robot being able to cook everything better. Yeah, these interactive screens. Are there going to be any humans left working?
Yeah.
And if so, what will they be doing? How can we prepare? How can more importantly, our children prepare to grow up in a world of AI? How can they, uh, how can they prepare for a profession that may or may not exist or may be taken over by AI? What will there be for us to do? And will we just become, you know, humans, these carbon-based life forms that are sort of living on the street because none of us have jobs anymore? What do you see in the future as far as careers?
Focusing just on the career aspect of this, I would say that we don't know. And there's a reason for that. The reason is that it's all going to be dependent on how we react now. And I mean now, 2024. We have to make decisions now. You know what? Let me just read to you. So I read the Fox News article, which was from the United States government. It's put out by, I assume, the Biden administration, and talked about that we need to act swiftly because AI could potentially lead to human extinctions. Right. Um, let's see here. Here's two more things that were said. Stephen Hawking said, no, this was in 2018, I believe. Stephen Hawking said, um, this was in Wired magazine. AI will eventually reach a level where it will essentially be a new form of life that will outperform humans. I fear that AI may replace humans altogether. If people design computer viruses, someone will design an AI that improves and replicates itself. And then finally, the Center for AI Safety, which is a bunch of people in the know and people in government. And you can look at this, if you go to www.safe.ai, you can look up their statement that they've released to the public. And they said a very short sentence, but listen to the wording. Mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority alongside other societal scale risks such as pandemics and nuclear war. So what they're all saying is, finally saying, it's a little late, but they're all saying we have to take action. And whether or not we take action will depend on our future. Now, they're talking about worst case human extinction. And I agree with that. At the very least, we will lose what we are as humans if we don't get control of this soon. So I agree with them. But the other thing that they are saying in that, implied in that, is if we take action, we can control this. If we take good action, good swift action, and that is going to affect our employment. So we need to decide as a society what we want this AI to do for us and what we don't want it to do for us. As a graphic designer, do I want to just turn it over to that and I just give my stamp of approval? Or do I want to use it as a tool to just help me? And everybody can ask that question in their profession. Teachers, plumbers, people, authors of books, and then you get into bigger fields, mathematics, chemistry, politics. We all have that question to ask. At what point do I become no longer useful? And at what point are we willing to allow ourselves to be unuseful? We have to ask these questions as a society, and we have to do something about it.
Do we
Because
have
if we
enough
don't,
time? Do we have enough time to ask those questions and actually form a consensus based on the way that we have a really hard time discussing anything in our society now?
well, given the fact that a lot of people I talk to don't even believe this is an issue still,
Right.
I'm going to say no. And given the fact that some people have been alarming the alarm bells since 2018 publicly, things like that, and nothing's been done because of that, I'm going to say no. I hope so. I mean, in theory, yeah, we could. In theory, we could do it. But people have to be aware of what's happening. They have to really understand the risk of what's happening. Because if we don't do anything, it will take charge. It just will. By definition, it will take charge. And maybe not this next generation so much. AGI. So something I just want to point out that I've been hearing a lot in the news about AGI lately. It's funny because I said in our last thing, you're going to hear about AGI a lot in the news in the next up to 5 years. And sure enough, now the next day it was in the news. But I want to be clear about something. A lot of things are being labeled as AGI and they're just not. It's really frustrating me. So like even that robot that I told you about, the figure one, it's called. Some of the graphics that go along with it are saying AGI. It's not AGI. It's a step before that. Okay. So it's on par with ChatGPT that we have now. And yeah, been seeing a lot. So it's just been frustrating me. So be careful when you hear something, check it. So just because it says AGI, it doesn't mean, yeah, it's AGI. So I wanted to say that. Yeah, I kind of lost my track here, but
Yeah. So we've talked a little bit about how it might influence careers. I mean, the potential for career change, is vast.
I do want to answer. Not right now. At some point here, I want to answer like, what can we do about all this? And like, how should we live our lives? How should we teach our children? Do we have time to talk about like the children part, or not necessarily?
Yeah, maybe. I think we might have to go into a next session to finish that up. Probably to finish out this session. How might AI impact liberty and a personal autonomy? We know in China there's what they call a social credit system. There's massive surveillance. They can their cameras can ID people by their gait, by the way they walk. And so there's a social credit system in which if you say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, you suddenly are not allowed to travel, you're not allowed to buy food. Other people don't want to be around you because their social credit score lowers if they're in proximity or have a social relationship with someone who has a really bad social credit score. So can AI aid liberty, or is AI a factor of the sort of what the police state's dream
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
control the population?
So the basic answer is it depends who's controlling it. Unfortunately, the people that are controlling it are typically governments and businesses that are out for profit. And believe me, I'm a capitalist. I'm not against profit, so don't read that wrong. But they are the ones that are really on the cutting edge of this. Um, I uh, I don't want to say his name, but the CEO of ChatGPT, I don't want to get sued or something, but let's
Right.
just say OpenAI. I question some of their what they say. They claim to be saying, "Hey, we're doing this for good. This is all for good. It's going to benefit mankind, and we're going to keep control of it, and we've got it under control." Right? Famous last words.
Hmm.
But they're also the ones that are pushing it. They're not stopping it. I don't hear them calling for everybody to stop, or if they are,
Yeah.
but they're still going on. So who's going to control it? That's what's going to determine that. Um, Understand, AI will be able to control and manipulate people far beyond what people are able to do. Um, it will be able to um, like, let's say you had a robot at home and it had this AG, even AGI technology. I'm not even going to say super general intelligence. Let's just say AGI technology. It will be masterful, and I mean masterful, at knowing when you're lying, when you're happy, when you're sad, when you're approving of something it's saying, when you're disapproving, any emotion you may have. It will know things about you that you might not even know. It might even be able to pick up illnesses in yourself that you didn't even know you had and the doctor missed. Okay. They're going to have incredible capabilities like that. And they're going to be in real time. So imagine somebody trying to influence another person, and they have this amazing ability to know exactly what the other person is thinking and feeling as they're speaking. As the words are coming out, they're able to influence them. This is the kind of capability it's going to have. It's going to be able to infiltrate the web. They're going to be able to put out misinformation or good information. It's going to really be able to manipulate things. If you think of 1984, the book or the movie, um, they basically changed history as it was happening.
Mm.
And we do that to a degree now. They'll have an incredible ability to do that later and manipulate, change the language, change the way people are thinking, both on a large scale and one on one. So I would caution people to, this is why, like, this is going back years. I've done some things that people find annoying online a lot. And one of the things would be like, somebody will make a fake, you remember the show, are you old enough to remember the show, the
I
hidden
tell you
camera show?
what,
Yeah.
hold
We
that
got,
thought because we're about to run out of time.
oh yeah, let's do it.
So keep that thought, and we're
Go
going to
right to it.
pick this up in the next show.
Okay.
So thanks for watching, everybody. We'll be back with you very soon.